Hello everybody and welcome back to another video for the day. You know you haven't seen it in a while, but you know what? I figured I would bring back Tales of Neckbeard just because it's been a little while and I'd like to diversify the channel. So if you want to be absolutely amazing, show your support, and see more of this type of content brought back, because I'm honestly trying different stuff to bring back something, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and if you have not already, subscribe and turn on those notifications. If this video gets 2,000 likes, I do believe I'll do another one. Plus, it gives me a reason to do game footage, so you know what, it's a win-win. Our first story comes to us from username similar%3. My neckbeard cousin that once tried to date me. Yeah boy. First time posting here, but I got a doozy that I've been holding on to for a number of years. My neckbeard story comes from my high school days in the late 90s. We didn't actually have many neckbeards, only about 12 out of all 4 years going there, and most of them were decent people. Kinda weird, kinda smelly, but overall okay. But the star of my story was like the king neckbeard. Short, fat, he would explain to you that he is husky in a condescending voice, scraggly facial hair that mostly grew out of his neck/double chin region. A fashion sense wasn't too weird, but we lived in the South in the 90s, so you didn't get much of the more risque anime stuff going on then. Mostly Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon shirts or weird too tight polos and jeans. Stinky with a layer of Old Spice, you know, the old man kind, just to add that touch of basement goblin. Now, I also have to add that he was my cousin. Remember this part, as it is especially important later on. This isn't a story about a one-time ordeal. Nay, this is a recounting of some of the BS this F pulled while we were in school. To start off, I was a grade ahead of him. I had 1 whole year before he came into the school and maladed me into notoriety, squeezing himself into my friends group and holding on for dear life until he found a few incels that worshipped him. We had been in the same elementary school as well, but he mostly kept to himself and wasn't that bad back then. We would talk once in a while until my last year there. I can only assume he thought to ingrain himself so that he would have someone he knew the next year. But this was about the time that his neckbeard tendencies started. He was constantly harassing my female friends, asking for dates as well as feel-ups. Yes, you read that right. So you can imagine that my freshman year was awesome. No neckbeard cousin, no creepy stalker talking about how he learned how to please a woman by watching softcore off-brand on HBO at night. No forcing me into talking about Pokemon or Sailor Moon. Mind you, I am a fan of Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, but this boy was already writing Shmentai off-brand about them and trying to make me read it for him and critique it. And no more smelling that weird mix of mayo, stale farts, grandpa cologne, and old jizz socks. So yeah, I was excited. I get a year without him, and it lulled me into a sense of false security, making the next year all the more worse. Sophomore year rolls around, and my school, they put the freshmen and the sophomores together in the gym until we were sorted into our homerooms. So there I sit, me and my friends talking and catching up about summer, when a shadow follows over me, and a few others too. I look up, and there he is in all his glory. For any of you that are older and remember a certain SNL character from back then called It's Pat, please insert that image here. One sec. We shall now call him Turtlebeard, or TB for short. Apparently, over the summer, he had gained a significant amount of weight, causing his neck to almost disappear between his shoulders and head, like a turtle hiding in its shell. The beginnings of a white trash goatee were starting, scraggly and patchy over his oily face, and also consisting of 3 different colors. Never trust a man with a multicolored beard, kids. Red, blonde, and brown. He was a brunette. He wore a shirt with a half-naked woman on the front proclaiming, "Mustaches are handlebars." The smell came next, causing one of my friends to gag and cover her face with her shirt. "I see you saved me a seat," TB said, squishing his way between me and another of my friends, smelling like he had shat himself right before he had joined us that morning. This, in turn, caused several of the people around me to move back, looking between me and this strange turtle man, and wondering just what the F was going on. Knowing he wouldn't be leaving anytime soon, I begrudgingly introduced him to everyone, subtlety trying to use my notebook to fan his stench away. The people behind us did not appreciate this. I just sat back and watched the disaster begin after this. Within 10 minutes, he had offended every friend of mine, had grabbed one's tots, and asked 3 of them out. He began to get upset at their blatant disrespect for them, as he loudly told me that I needed to find better friends, ones that didn't think they were better than everyone. After that, he stood up, wafting his stink around as he marched away, blessedly going to harass someone else. Everything was more or less the same after that for a while. He'd harass girls he liked, got took to the office a few times for inappropriate touching, and was on the constant hunt for an F-buddy. Follow up to the next year, and TB had grown more confident. The newest influx of freshmen unfortunately included some very naive girls, the type that has low self-esteem and are willing to do anything to have someone want them. I am by no means making fun of them, as I watched what these girls went through with his nasty butt and tried to tell them that they were worth more than that. And while some listened, most didn't until after he had hurt them. Third day of my junior year, he finds me sitting outside for lunch, swaggering over to my table with his grace of a drunken hippo, 2 incels following him like puppies. These boys lived vicariously through TB, which is a sad thing all on its own. "Hey," he called, waving a stubby hand at me jauntily. He plopped down, making a poor picnic table bow under his weight. "So, I've got news," he began, waggling his brows. I gave an inward sigh, making sure to not breathe through my nose. "What?" I deadpanned, eyeing the 2 boys behind him and making them squirm. He followed my gaze, waving a hand flippantly. "That's name and name," he said as an introduction, turning back to me, looking miffed that he had been interrupted. "Anyways, guess what?" he said, leering at me. "I got a girlfriend." A shock resonated through me, wondering what poor girl he had scared into dating him. He had been sneaking into the special ed classes? I wasn't sure, but I kinda was scared that he had. "Oh, that's awesome, TB," I said, sounding worried. He rolled his eyes, smiling greasily. Now, don't sound so jealous. I still make time for my favorite cousin," he chuckled, patting me on the shoulder. Giving him a look of disbelief, I feeling my stomach churn at his words, I scooted further away from him as he began telling me of his new girlfriend, who we will call Yoda because that is exactly who she looked like. Suddenly, it made sense in a bad way. This was a sweet and quiet girl who was bullied a lot for her looks and her height, and one who would latch onto the first guy that looked her way. Making a note to myself to talk to her later, I listened to his story of him wooing her, his words, not mine, oohing and awing at the right times, until he began joking about what all he thought he could get her to do. Just a reminder, this is the same guy that was writing insect flicks in 7th grade, beast stories, and extremely graphic stuff, so you can imagine what all he talked about, even if it was slightly censored because I was there. I went off on him, telling him not to be disgusting and that Yoda probably wouldn't appreciate him saying he'd let his friends have a go at her too. The incels immediately quieted, a look of quiet hatred coming over their faces as I told their leader off. But TB shrugged, laughing a bit and saying that it was just guys BSing, and I had no need to worry, not taking offense to what I said. He did that a lot. The bell rang, giving me a reason to escape, and after waving him off when he proposed walking me to class, I hurried inside, looking around for Yoda. I didn't find her until last period, seeing her in the restroom. I hoped she would listen to me, watching her light up as I called her name, and feeling bad that she had been caught up with him. I introduced myself and explained that I was TV's cousin. Watching her blush and smile, she gussed about how much of a nice guy he was, but I shushed her, asking her to let me tell her a few things. She listened, eyes welling up as I explained the conversation we had had at lunch, but knowing it wouldn't make a difference. And sure enough, I was right. She told me that she appreciated me looking out for her and that she would be careful, but that she'd give him a little while to see if he would change. I felt like banging my head against a wall. She thanked me, giving me a sudden hug before making her way out of the restroom and leaving me to worry about her even more. It took a week before she found me again, crying as she told me I was right and that he had pressured her into having sex with him over the weekend and doing effed up stuff to her that I'm sure that bothers her now years later. The worst part was that she had invited the incels over to join in, and the only thing that saved her was his mom coming home early. She had gotten his mom to take her home immediately after, not having any contact with him for the rest of the weekend after that. She had avoided him when she came to school, finding me first thing. I cried with this girl, telling her how sorry I was. I asked her if she wanted to do anything about it, but she refused. She didn't want her mother to find out what had happened and was terrified of him making it worse. The best advice I could give her was to stay away from him, to avoid him, and to get me if he tried anything. But the advice wasn't even needed though. Apparently, he had taken her avoidance as a breakup, and by the time I saw him again, he had another girl with him, a fat little legbeard we'll call Hog, as they are her brethren, though I'm insulting them with that description. Hog was laughing, squealing at something TB was saying, his lackeys standing there like bodyguards. I wasn't joking about him being King NB in our part of the woods. He sees me, pulling Hog over with him and waving at me. I saw a frown mar Hog's face, jealousy boiling over as she sat next to me. "This is Hog," he gushed, pulling her down next to him and making the bench creak ominously. "I thought you were dating Yoda," I asked lightly, watching him roll his eyes. "She dumped me," he lied, "over the weekend. Didn't give me a reason, just called and said it was over. Couldn't have done anything to do with pressuring her for S, right? Or trying to having a gang be her?" I asked, my voice going cold. TB paled while Hog stared at us, her piggy eyes aligned with the news of this drama. "She didn't complain," he finally spouted. "She was okay with the S and wanted to try having a threesome," he whispered, trying to sound convincing, but I shook my head. "BS, TB, that girl was terrified." I growled, making Hog swell up in anger. "It's not his fault that she was a tease," she hissed, draping a fat arm around his shoulder protectively. Whatever face I made when she said this apparently scared TB as he pushed her back and moved in front of her. "It's over now, right? We broke up. It was a miscommunication on both parts, as I thought she was okay with it," he said in a hush, looking terrified. I huffed, looking away from him. Just stop being a freaking skis, TB. Seriously, if you find someone that's just as gross as you, then by all means, go at it, I said, looking back at Hog and watching her swell up even more with anger, but keeping her mouth shut. This was the last interaction we had for a while, as I couldn't stand the sight of him and his incels. Time moved on, and so did he. Hog was left behind a month later, who was replaced by Gopher. Gopher begat Barrel, and Barrel begat Chipmunk. Chipmunk begat Snaggletooth, and Snaggletooth begat Emo Big Bird. If I listed the rest, we'd surpass the Bible, so just know he made his way through the whole of the freshmen and most of the sophomore girls that were in the weird, mousy category. End of the year rolls around, and he hunts me down, apologizing about what had happened with Yoda, and telling me that he would apologize to her later as well. I pointed out that he hadn't all year, so why now? He gave me a side eye, telling me that he hated me being disappointed in him, and that he wanted to fix it, and that he missed us hanging out. Alarm bells rang louder than a drunk Quasimodo cutting loose at Notre Dame. Remember that important fact from the beginning? I'd always gotten creepy feelings from TV, but had hoped that he wouldn't be so disgusting as to take any sort of action. He gave a splotchy blush, his double chin quivering with anticipation. "You know, we used to hang out at lunch. We don't do that anymore. I miss that," he said quietly, side-eyeing me again, looking for my reaction. Swallowing back the vomit that threatened to come up, I shrugged, telling him that I mostly hung out with my friends at lunch inside, which I did to get away from him. He seemed to lose steam here, weakly giving me a sad goodbye, turning back to watch me, I guess hoping I'd call him back. Nah, didn't happen. Last day of school rolls around with him stalking me all day, asking me to sign his yearbook, asking me to come hang out that summer, and so forth. I sidestepped as much as I could, making imaginary plans that I had to attend to get out of seeing him. I honestly couldn't imagine the stench in the sweltering heat of a southern summer. So my senior year comes at last. Nothing amiss goes on at first, just him generally stalking me and being creepy. He acquired a new incel over the summer, telling me how he had the other two looked up to himself and that he helped them be more social. All the while, all three of them looked like they would are a dog if given the chance and if it would stand still long enough. A month in, I started talking to a junior in one of my classes. It turns out he's semi-friends with TB, semi-meaning he's a really sweet guy and can't tell him to go the F away. So he puts up with him because he feels sorry for him. Talking turns into flirting and we are tentatively discussing dating by October. Now, at this time, my school used to have a yearly field trip to a fall festival thing, and we agreed to meet up there, making it a small first date, as most of the teachers didn't care what you did as long as nobody died, and nothing was set on fire, so we'd have the freedom to do as we pleased. We'll call him Guardian Angel, or GA, as that's kinda what he was after this point. The day rolls around, and sadly, I was stuck to the bus as I was a poor kid with no car. And sure enough, as I'm sitting there listening to my CD Walkman, yes, I'm that old, kiddies, and hoping we leave soon, I feel the bus shake and give way slightly. Look up to see TB heaving himself up the steps, swaying as he pushed his folds past the seat. I duck down, hoping he doesn't notice me, but today was not my day. He tried to push my things aside and sit beside me, but I pushed back, glaring at him. "Leave it. I want to stretch out later," I told him. He gave a very put-upon sigh and moved to the seat in front of me, turning to face me, blasting me with the hot smell of summer garbage as he spoke. "We hoping to see you today," he proclaimed, a creepy look in his eyes. "You want to hang out?" I shook my head, taking off my headphones, knowing he wouldn't shut up and let me listen to music. "Nah, I got a date," I said. I'm not even looking at him, and I shoved my Walkman back in my bag. I feel the seat jerk and looked up, seeing that he had a death grip on it. "What?" I glanced around at the other people on the bus, blushing at the attention his outburst caused. "I said I have a date," I gritted out, glaring at him. "With who?" he demanded, a sheen of sweat covering his reddened face. "GA," I said, grinning smugly. The dude was hot, so I was happy to brag. "GA?" he asked in disbelief, looking angrier by the second. He slammed himself against the back of the seat, too angry to speak at this point. He had turned and glared at me every so often, and began to mutter under his breath about jocks, life being unfair, and how women were too stupid to know who they needed. Not what they wanted. Yep. He said that. I shrugged, happy that he shut up finally, and pulled out my music once more as the bus pulled out, heading to the festival thingy. The entire bus ride was spent watching TB glare at me. He would say something, and I would point at my headphones, making him even madder. I knew that it would bite me in the ass later, but right now, I didn't care. I just didn't want to deal with him. TB finally turns around and stops glaring at me the rest of the way, being one of the first to get off the bus when we get there, heaving his way past the others to get out. I take my time, seeing GA waiting on me outside. I also see TB and his minions glaring at GA a few yards away, TB muttering under his rancid breath the whole time. GA grins when I meet him, cocking his head back at TB. "What's up with him? He looks pissed when he got out," he asked. I had slightly explained what I thought was going on with TB to him before. He agreed that it did indeed sound like he was trying to get with me. Yeah. And that it was definitely disgusting too. But once I explained what happened on the bus, GA shook his head, glaring back at TB and making him pale slightly. "If that sick F tries anything else, you'll tell me, right?" he asked, getting a relieved nod from me. He grabbed my hand and led me off, both of us hoping to have a nice rest of the day. But alas, it was not going to be. Well, it was mostly nice. I just like being dramatic. After about an hour of wandering around all the booths and rides, I noticed we had some stalkers, mostly because I turned around and saw TB try to hide himself behind a telephone pole. Try being the operative word. Thinking that the fat goon was just trying to be a creeper, I didn't tell GA, as I was enjoying my day with him, and didn't want to ruin it with TB and his creepiness. That was a big mistake, boys and girls. I forgot about TB after a while, letting GA lead me around to where he wanted to go. We ended up at a ride that I was too terrified to go on, and I told him I'd wait for him so he could ride it. I waved off his protest about leaving me and shoved him towards the ride with a laugh, telling him I'd keep my feet on the ground and wait for him to come back. He kissed my cheek and ran off like an excited 5-year-old, leaving me behind a small building that held the generators for the rides. I sat down against it, happy to be in shade for once that day, when an exceptionally large shadow fell in front of me, blocking my view of the ride. "Having fun?" TB asked snidely, glaring down at me. I went to stand up, and he moved closer, shoving his girth towards me to keep me from doing so. I moved to the side, jumping up in disgust, and moving back away from him. "The F is your problem?" I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. He moved closer, his incels flanking him and turning to face the crowd, trying to block us from view. "My problem is that after all this time of being there for you, being nice to you, you go and get with someone else," he grunted, inching closer. "You sick F, we're kin," I hissed, arms going to my sides and hands forming the fist, ready to fight him if I had to. He shrugged, trying to look pitiful but coming off looking like a deranged ogre. "I've been in love with you for years," he exclaimed, "and I don't care. I asked my mom and she said it was alright. We're only third cousins, so it doesn't count." I stared at him in utter disbelief, trying to comprehend the words that just came from him, and wondering just how the F I was going to get out of this. "TB, that's effing disgusting," I ranted. "That's if you don't give us a chance," he yelled over me, moving closer. "You just had to be a bee though, didn't you? Just had to go out and W yourself to the first guy that would have you." At this point, spittle was flying as he raged, and a vein had popped upon his forehead. He moved faster than I thought him capable of, pinning me against the wall at my back. "I'll show you if you just give me a chance," he groaned, trying to lean in and kiss me. I lost it and screamed, overwhelmed by the smell of rotten food wafting from his spittle-covered mouth, when he was jerked back and I was freed. GA had him on the ground, beating the S out of him faster than I could blink. He got quite a few hits in before someone pulled him off TB, leaving the fat lump on the ground crying. The next hour was spent explaining to our teachers and the cops what happened. Now this, boys and girls, will make some of you mad, but small town politics and all that, you know? No charges were pressed, as the cops said GA had punished TB and that they didn't see any reason to involve the law. The cops laughed off the fact that TB had attacked me, telling us all to behave ourselves, and left. My teacher, though, was pissed. He marched TB back to the bus, as well as his lackeys, telling him that if he even looked at me again to let him know, TB would be getting suspended for 2 weeks, the most my teacher could get, but that he would personally put him on probation after he returned. The best part of it all, said teacher was also my cousin, and while TB's mom was just as gross as him, his dad was not, and he made a point to tell me in front of TB that he would be calling him personally. One of the perks of a small town. TB lost it at that point, sobbing his apologies and begging the teacher not to call his dad. Now the ending is a bit happier. TB was AWOL for 2 months after that. Apparently, after his suspension, his dad added his own punishment. Being an army vet, he ran TB through a month and a half of boot camp, making him afraid to even piss without asking permission. He avoided me at school after that, running like his butt was on fire if he even seen me. GA got the same treatment, except TB would cry sometimes in his vicinity, which I always wished he'd go around me fuck. He avoided me at school after that, running like his ass was on fire if he seen me. GA got the same treatment, except TB would cry sometimes in his vicinity, which I always wished he'd do around me too, but never did, unfortunately. After school, I moved on, and I still hear about TB from time to time. Apparently, I wasn't the only cousin he set his sights on, using a couple of family reunions to try to pick up dates. I'm not even joking here. He's been through 4 marriages now and countless relationships, making me truly question humanity at times. I hope you all enjoyed my story as well as my trauma, and that you got a few laughs out of it. But please remember, never ever underestimate a neckbeard who is intent on being with you. While it's funny now, at the time, if it wasn't for GA, I don't really know what might have happened. So please stay safe. You know, honestly, I wasn't expecting the story to be this long, but actually, this is the wow. And you know, you would kind of think that anybody with any common sense would think that if you can spot 2 people on the same family tree, maybe don't try to date them. But unfortunately, I guess I'm expecting too much out of people. For these type of storytime format videos, I do intend on doing like at least 2 stories per video, even in the event it's a long one like this. So in case you guys have stuck around this long, thank you so much. I absolutely love all of you. Our next story comes to us from username EmptyBat6077. Neckbeard gets angry that I won't break up with my girlfriend so he can have a chance with her. I ran into Neckbeard the other day behind a counter at a 7-Eleven. Thank God he was working. Anyways, it sparked some memories I had with this Neckbeard since we went to high school together. Figured I would share the best by means of cringe memory I have. Back in high school, I was a bit of a nerd. Loved Nintendo, Pokemon, Zelda, Kingdom Hearts, some animes, mostly shows like Fruit Baskets, but enjoy the heck out of Full Metal Alchemist and a couple of action ones. But I had enough interest in other things that I never really was labeled as a nerd. Neckbeard was, well, Neckbeard. Anime was life, thought he was wide as a puddle, deep as an ocean. Unfortunately, it was more wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. Hygiene wasn't on top of his priorities either, and I'm sure if the Joker came out in 2010, he would have identified with him. Well, during our senior year, I would skip high school to sneak to classes at the local college to see what college life would be like and to get a head start. My favorites would be the music classes. I love music, learning to play, write music theory, etc. This is important because Neckbeard, who was into metal, wanted to start a band, so he begged his mother to buy him a guitar and amp. She did it, and Neckbeard came up to me the next day with a guitar covered in black permanent marker and a couple of edgy stickers, wanting to know if I wanted to join his new band called Soldiers of the Damned. Internally, I was angry at the mistreatment of the guitar, but laughing at his proposal and his getup: trench coat, sweatpants, top hat, and Korn t-shirt. I asked him if he knew how to play yet, since it's hard to start a band when you don't know how to play anything, so he shows me a basic scale, and I asked him to play a song. Naturally, he didn't know any, and that's when I was calm enough to notice the guitar wasn't tuned. So I convinced him to hand it over so I can fix the problem. Tuned, I play I Can Go the Distance from Hercules, and that's when a friend of mine, her name of the story will be Amy, comes up and asks for another song. I play another, and the day goes by. I'm not sure if this is when the Ladybug hit the Neckbeard, but I'm willing to bet it was close. He puts on the old Neckbeard charm, complimenting her beauty, her eyes, her hair, you get it, and asked her out for that very evening, despite only kind of knowing her. She turns him down politely and informs Neckbeard that her and I already had a date planned for that night. I'm pretty sure he went home to write some poorly put together poem about heartbreak. Soon after that date, Amy and I went steady, and Neckbeard was upset, I'm sure. He kept pestering me to join his band and kept showing me the new things he had learned, like an ecstatic schoolboy who found $1 on the road. But I had no interest in joining. It wasn't my cup of tea. Eventually, I broke down and decided to at least help him progress with his ambition. He had only 2 rules. A, he has to be the leader of the band. That's fine. I kept telling him I only wanted to teach him, not join. Not sure why he thought to bring up that rule. And B, Amy had to be there. She consented and was fine by me. She wanted to see anyways. And I didn't have too much free time during the week for it to be just her and I. During our breaks at practice, we would nerd a little and play Yu-Gi-Oh! Dude took as much care of his cards as he did his guitar. Now, off to the climax. These lessons only lasted a few months. Senior year was ending, and I was working on getting into college. Amy and I both did, but because of conflicting schedules, we spent a little less time together, but we stayed together. One day, she gives me a call, and in angry tears, I ask what's wrong, and she told me about Neckbeard's constant texting and calling, confessing his love, and how happy they would be together if she just gave him a chance. In tears, she begs me to talk to him and try to get it through his head that it wasn't going to happen. I calm her down and hang up to call Neckbeard. I'm angry for a couple of reasons. He's been bugging my girlfriend for what sounded like weeks, maybe even months, but also because early on in our relationship, Neckbeard actually asked me if he should ask her out again if things between us didn't work out. I told him no, and in no uncertain terms, not to ask that again. So I called Neckbeard and asked what his problem was, asking him how did he think it was okay to hit on my girlfriend. She's taken, and her boyfriend is the guy giving him music lessons for free. His answer was basically this: I just don't get it. Why do you get to have a girlfriend and not me? You don't even know if you'll go to the same school. I could treat her better than you ever could. You just need to break up with her and give a real man a chance. So I tell him lessons are over and that if he comes near me or Amy again, I'm calling the police. Amy and I split up a year later on friendly terms, and Neckbeard never had a chance. She is a mom of 3, and I'm working for one of the biggest global banks in the world. Neckbeard, from mutual connections, has only gotten more Neckbeard, sadly, and constantly is in between jobs for inappropriate conversations with female coworkers and customers. I see him on the streets from time to time and always looking for another game of cards. Oh, I'll play, just not with him. If you want more Neckbeard stories with this guy, I have a couple of music lessons, just let me know. Honestly, I'm starting to notice a common denominator between a lot of these things. It's the lack of common sense. Like in the first one, it was the dude wanting to date his own cousin, and this one was a person wanting to get another person to leave. Like the whole, hey man, can I have a turn with the girlfriend? That kind of stupid logic there. But with that, that is going to have to be it with the video. If you want to see more of these storytime format videos like this, be sure to hit that like button. Let me know down below what you would like to see in the near future, as the engagement helps the channel, plus it helps me figure out what would be a good thing to do for the channel, and I might actually find it fun. And lastly, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'll be sure to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.